on collaborative curriculum mapping. So we're really glad that you chose to attend this presentation. I know there are a lot of exciting things to attend. And our team is from the California State University San Marcos campus. So we have 22 campuses across the state of California. We're the state university system, and CSU San Marcos is in North San Diego County. So we have San Diego State and then CSU San Marcos in San Diego County. So a little bit about vocal eyes. At the start of meetings, presentations, and panel discussions, people introduce themselves, and in these situations, people who are not blind take in a lot of visual information about each other without having to define or consent to it. So giving a description of yourself for the benefit of blind or visually impaired people when speaking at a conference or seminar is good practice and something we see as part of our professional responsibilities. Using guidance from the organization Vocal Eyes, a UK registered nonprofit organization, we'll each introduce ourselves with a self-description. So I am Jen Fabbi. I'm the Special Collections Librarian here at CSU San Marcos. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a cis white woman. I just barely turned 50. I have brown hair cut in a long bob, and today I'm wearing a blue shirt, short sleeve shirt with small black and white floral pattern.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lalitha Nataraj. I go by Lolly. I'm the social sciences librarian here at Cal State San Marcos. I am a cis woman in my late 40s with shoulder length black hair, sprinkled with a bit of silver, tied back with a floral headband and a braid. I'm of South Asian descent with Tamil and Telugu heritage, and today I'm wearing a gray sweater and eyeglasses.
And hi, everyone. I'm Sean Visintainter, the head of special collections here at CSUSM. My pronouns are he, him. I am a cis white man, middle-aged, with short brown hair and a graying or gray, at this point, beard. I am wearing a red, gray, pink, and white checked shirt.
And unfortunately, our colleague Jennifer Ho is not able to join us today. So we'll miss her, but she'll be available by email later for questions. Before we fully dive in, we want to acknowledge that when we are presenting from campus, which several of us are, we are in North San Diego County. We are guests on traditional unceded territory of the Luiseño Piam people. And so we want to acknowledge that. And here's an agenda. We will try to stick to this. We'll see what happens. Our presentation will last about 30 minutes, and then we'll have some Q&A. We're factoring in about 10 minutes, and we'll see how that goes. Then we do have group discussion questions and a couple polls for about 20 minutes. And feel free to raise your hand or put questions in the chat and we'll get those. And then at the end, we have a whole group activity, no breakout sessions. So we hope that you hang around for the discussion questions and group activity because we can learn from each other. And we are very excited to hear your perspectives on this initiative that we're undertaking. So now I'm going to hand it over to Lolly.
So we want to start by asking, how can archivists become sustained instructional partners? Primary source literacy is central to student research and archival work, but it is quite difficult to intentionally integrate across curricula. So in this respect, instructional faculty, along with subject liaison librarians, must look to archivists as sustained instructional partners. In my capacity as a social sciences librarian, I've observed in recent years that several of my liaison areas, notably ethnic studies, sociology, and American Indian studies, have been focused on integrating primary sources into research assignments. So when working with courses in these areas, I make sure to reach out to my colleagues in special collections and archives to collaborate on library instruction. And there are also instances when our instructional faculty will bypass any conversation with me and reach out directly to our special collections and archives folks. It is also no coincidence that the programs I named want to move beyond peer-reviewed scholarship and integrate experiential, community-based archival content into their curriculum. There is a renewed focus on emphasizing and rectifying silences within academic research, and that especially includes archives. So in curriculum mapping, we visually chart learning goals, instruction, and assessment across course progression. Curriculum mapping has been used since the 1970s in K through 12 education, but it is increasingly adaptable to higher ed. Archambault and Masunaga have observed that this project, which is often overseen by third-party coordinators, accounted for overlap and variance among teachers teaching similar content, but it actually wasn't until the late 1980s that teachers participated directly in the endeavor. So in this way, curriculum mapping became not just a tool to refine individual instruction, but a foundational systemic process for creating a consistent core curriculum. So curriculum mapping is an intentional and consistent method of scaffolding information literacy concepts within departments or programs. Fabbi and Lancy note that it entails identifying and addressing any, quote, academic gaps, redundancies, and misalignments, end quote, to improve the coherence and effectiveness of a program. Curriculum mapping asks what is taught, so the content, areas of expertise, learning outcomes, how it is taught, the learning resources, learning opportunities, and when it is taught, curriculum sequence within the degree program, as well as the means of determining if a student has achieved the desired learning outcomes. So that's the assessment piece. I focus on developing and sustaining relationships with our faculty and students primarily through library instruction and one-on-one reference interactions. So while this engagement has been fruitful in many ways, it is also somewhat been piecemeal, since not all faculty are necessarily invested in partnering with librarians on information literacy instruction. So our IL instruction sessions are often tailored to specific course assignments, but their larger objective is to scaffold information literacy skills where students continuously apply and build upon what they've learned across their major courses. IL instruction is usually delivered in isolated one-shot sessions and sometimes misconstrued by faculty as transactional and tutorial-based. That's a perception that forecloses critical conversations around how information sources are created and disseminated. So in the teaching and learning department, which is what I belong to, we've observed students fatigue with repeated IL sessions. We hear a lot of, we've already learned this stuff, but one-on-one reference has shown us that students do not necessarily retain or build upon information literacy concepts. Curriculum mapping has long been assumed to be the domain of instruction librarians who continue to use the strategy to refine IL literacy, IL student learning outcomes. But as we see more professors at CSUSM integrating primary source heavy assignments into their courses, it's become increasingly clear that there needs to be a systemic structured approach to identifying primary source literacy outcomes.
Hi everyone, this is Sean Visintainter, head of Special Collections. At CSUSM's Special Collections, we conduct primary source instruction for a variety of disciplines. We also participate in classroom instruction and curricular activities that utilize our materials in some capacity, including, of course, through research and curricular assignments, but also through things like experiential learning. These two avenues of instruction and activities can intersect, but do not always, as our primary source instruction exists in a larger, broader capacity than specifically in relation to our special collections or our collections. In adapting curriculum mapping for archival instruction, our core idea is to align our primary source learning outcomes with disciplinary curricula. Additionally, through the mapping process, most importantly through the conversations with instructional faculty as part of this process, we also hope to gain a better understanding of how our distinct resources, our special collections, can intersect with the curricula in our various programs, including through class assignments, experiential learning, internships, tours, and course guides. Lastly, we aim to move our instruction models, which are largely relational, to something that is a bit more structured and programmatic, where instruction happens at specific points in a student's journey, with an idea to scaffold the building of primary source literacy as students level up in their academic skills and their rigor, and to standardize this process across instructors and semesters. Mapping becomes a valuable way to surface information like when and where students develop specific skills, where they build upon their skill sets, and how and where learning outcomes are assessed. One of the guiding stars for this work are the Guidelines for Primary Source Literacy, created jointly between the Society of American Archivists and the Association of College and Research Libraries Rare Book and Manuscript section. These guidelines articulate the range of knowledge, skills, and abilities required to effectively use primary sources and codify best practices for utilizing these materials. Primary source literacy is a separate literacy from information literacy, though it intersects nicely with information literacy and other literacies and concepts. The guidelines were developed in the spirit of ACRL's information literacy framework, which articulates a set of interconnected core ideas, knowledge practices, and learning dispositions key to successfully navigating the information landscape more generally. Primary source learning outcomes intersect very well with the humanities and the social sciences and are well suited for students enrolled in those disciplines, as well as with general education students taking humanities and social sciences courses. For our project, we wished to start with a degree program that had an existing strong relationship with us, that was not too large, that had a teaching and learning subject liaison librarian who would be enthusiastic about collaborating with the special collections department, and that we envisioned would have a faculty body that would be responsive and interested in the project. Given all these criteria, CSUSM's Ethnic Studies program seemed like a fantastic fit. With a potential program zeroed in on, we needed to lay the groundwork for what was to come. We started with the activities on this slide. We needed a communications plan for both our internal library colleagues and our external ethnic studies colleagues. First, for the library, we created a plan to inform and, if needed, discuss our project with our colleagues in the teaching and learning department. And if there was interest, bring our social sciences librarian, Lali, into this project. Happily, Lali was enthusiastic and she joined our team. We also needed a plan to communicate with ethnic studies. We started by emailing the program director, and although he was enthusiastic, he's also a very busy individual. And communications were drawn out and they stopped and started. And at the same time, we'd identified ethnic studies instructional faculty with whom my colleague Jen, our communities and cultures archivist, and Lali, who's our teaching and learning colleague, that they had strong existing relationships with. And narrowed those faculty down to one person that we felt would be especially interested in this project. We reached out to her and she has since also joined our team and has been invaluable in providing us with a better understanding of the internal working culture and operations of ethnic studies, as well as communicating out the project. We will be meeting with the entire Ethnic Studies department in the fall to discuss our project in more detail. Additionally, we created a one-pager explaining the basics of what curriculum mapping is, its benefits, and how to contact us for more information and participation. And this one-pager is currently, aimed at the audience of the Ethnic Studies faculty and can be adapted for future projects. While communicating with stakeholders, we also conducted an assessment of the various ways in which we had curricular integrations in place with ethnic studies. So analyzing reference use, instruction, and assignments our department had been involved with over the last 5 years. While the ethnic studies minor began at CSUSM circa 2001, the major was a relatively new development, having been created in 2017. Ethnic Studies' first major graduate was the year 2019, which was the same year that the current program director, Jason Perez, joined the university. With a new program and with our own special collections department being founded about the same time, our analysis showed that there was no initial integration with ethnic studies. Over the following years, our communities and cultures archivist, Jen Ho, who does our department's primary resource and instruction, founded strong personal connections with some ethnic studies faculty, leading to increased instruction, tours, and experiential learning opportunities through activities like oral history. And I saw a comment, yes, we would be happy to share the one-pager. We also found that there was little correlation between our growing instruction and experiential learning activities and our distinct collections used by ethnic studies students through activities like reference that remained low for the ethnic studies program. This is not entirely unsurprising because our instruction is broader in scope, being focused on primary source instruction. Lastly, this assessment confirmed that we had what we'd already strongly suspected, that our integration with ethnic studies was largely relational, and thus students across certain classes were not getting the same level of primary resource or primary source instruction, depending upon who was teaching those courses. This affirmed one of our secondary goals to make our instruction a lot more programmatic through this project. We also analyzed the Ethnic Studies degree roadmap, its website, and its syllabi to better understand where primary source learning outcomes would best intersect with their specific courses, who taught those courses, how often they were taught, whether they were mandatory or elective courses, and whether or not those courses also met general education requirements. This analyzation also provided us with a better understanding of assignments, and it confirmed and built upon subsequent conversation with our instructional faculty partner in ethnic studies. So here's an example of a curriculum map, which will be similar to what we create next year as we work further with ethnic studies faculty. It shows learning outcomes along the left column and program courses across the top, and maps where the different learning outcomes are present in which courses. The I on the chart indicates that the course is appropriate to introduce that learning outcome. The R indicates that the course can reinforce the learning outcomes. Which is the way that the students move into higher level skills as they move along their program. Additionally, one could add an E to indicate when the course is appropriate to extend or to develop mastery over a learning outcome. We've also discussed the need to map other curricular integrations with special collections, such as potential collections use, possibilities for experiential learning, and potential subject and course guides. And we may use a map like this as a jumping off point to create further documentation that can communicate value for our department in future collaborations and integration with ethnic studies.
Hi, Lali here. So as you can see, our partners in curriculum mapping are disciplinary faculty. By working with faculty to align the subject matter with instruction regarding primary sources, search methods, and information literacy, students get the best of both worlds, subject matter education along with real-life research and resources. Faculty collaboration takes time, and it all starts on the basis of a healthy relationship. As Sean mentioned, Jen and I already had a trusted relationship with our first faculty partner due to several years of having provided one-shot instruction sessions in her classes. Coincidentally, just before the four of us started this curriculum mapping conversation, this faculty member had expressed interest in hands-on learning and providing opportunities for students to be engaged in more critical learning. So this illustrates the level of trust we have in each other and the fact that we were all ready to take our teaching up a notch. That relationship and alignment of values is important to this work. The four of us thought the best way to formally introduce curriculum mapping would be to present it to the departments at their department meeting, where we talk about our objectives and socialize our ideas. So as previously mentioned, we anticipate meeting with the pilot department next semester, and we look forward to gathering feedback on these goals, as well as addressing any concerns held by departmental faculty. After this meeting, we can begin working on our goals, instruction, and assignments together with the intended result of becoming instructional partners alongside classroom faculty. There are a number of benefits for the students when archivists become instructional partners. Primary source research becomes a real-life tangible activity in which students understand the cultural and historical significance of these sources. They not only learn how to find these sources, but in many cases, they become more motivated to do so, especially when the real-life application is apparent. And this often becomes personal. Many of our students are BIPOC, with nearly half of our students from the Latinx community. When students see themselves and their community members in this historical record, these primary sources become much more than just research materials. They are records of their own community's existence. Institutionally, curriculum mapping helps us build stronger relationships between library faculty and classroom faculty, which we hope will snowball into referrals and new partnerships and projects. Increased visibility for the Special Collections Department will help us to build the university archives, do more community-based projects, and find funding for our work on and off campus. And now I'll turn it over to Jen.
Thanks, Lolly. So as you might imagine, the biggest challenges to an initiative like this one are, oops, I think where am I? Okay, sorry. Our time and coordination with disciplinary faculty. So we were lucky that when we approached the ethnic studies faculty member who we hoped would be our main point of contact with the program faculty, she let us know they were in the middle of a period of curriculum revision. And there was already a committee formed to do this, so timing was good. Also, there is a lot of faculty autonomy on our campus. So for example, there may be 6 sections of Ethnic Studies 101 taught each semester, and while the learning outcomes are the same, articulated the same, each faculty member may teach it differently. So coordinating one assignment across all sections is a matter of not only collaborative assignment design, but of changing some cultural aspects of the department. Faculty buy-in for this type of initiative is a challenge. We chose to approach ethnic studies first because the relationships with Jen Ho and Lolly were already strong, and they were both already doing instruction for several faculty members in the program. Curriculum complexity is also a challenge, especially when you have a mix of both non-major and major students in each course. And part of this complexity happens when courses don't have prerequisites or an order that students are required to take them in. And so you can imagine that even knowing that requires quite a bit of research and discussion with faculty. Lessons learned from previous curriculum mapping projects that we talked about when choosing a department to approach include starting small. This includes a small and manageable number of faculty, number of courses, and number of majors. Ethnic studies fit these criteria perfectly. As mentioned above, leveraging existing relationships and successes is a key, and it's difficult to approach a group of faculty cold without existing relationships. Focusing on shared goals and student learning outcomes is important in gaining faculty buy-in. This is where the mapping program and course outcomes to primary source literacy learning outcomes ahead of time comes into play. And then building the initiative incrementally by starting with one course or one discrete grouping of courses works well. Having an overall plan of which courses you want to tackle and in what order is great. And then starting with one course, for example, we'll be starting with Ethnic Studies 101, involves coordination and assignment design with 6 faculty members. It can get overwhelming if you try to do it all at one time. It's pretty much impossible. So our next step at CSUSM is to continue our collaboration with the Ethnic Studies program. And because our main contact with the program is teaching the 101 course in the fall, we all agree it's a good place to start. Our goal is to have one common information/primary source literacy assignment across sections that can be assessed. In the future, we hope to expand the initiative to larger majors where primary source literacy is a critical learning outcome and it's a natural fit. These could include history, sociology, political science, education, and we've even talked about mapping assignments to not assignments, but learning outcomes to co-curricular student organizations. We do have ideas for assignments that we can fine-tune collaboratively with our disciplinary faculty colleagues, but assessments need to be driven by the assignments and are yet to be determined. By having successful, tangible outcomes of examples of how these partnerships can impact student learning, we hope to deepen our partnerships with various majors. At the beginning, we had talked about maybe doing this with our sociology program, but it is our second largest major on campus with many, many faculty and many, many students and majors. So we decided to start with ethnic studies. While curriculum mapping has been discussed in the literature with regard to information literacy learning outcomes, it's not something that has been considered yet that we know of within special collections and archives as a tool for integrating primary source outcomes. So we did a presentation to the California State University libraries at a conference earlier this summer, and we're presenting this today, and we're really hoping to get feedback and ideas and to be able to start this discussion or continue this discussion in the field. And then we have plans to author an article in the near future. So here are our major takeaways from the presentation. Curriculum mapping is a structured method for intentional integration of information literacy and primary source learning outcomes. Scaffolding primary source instruction benefits students by introducing and reinforcing their learning through the curriculum in an increasingly sophisticated way. And collaboration with disciplinary faculty on assignment and assessment design improves student learning. And finally, to answer our initial challenge question, archivists can become essential and sustained educational partners through these collaborations. So I'm